Welcome to the first live recap of the Rabbit Rundown. Again, my name is Jacob. This is Cody. You got to finally see why we only do this on podcast form and not in video form. But first day of the Summit League tournament, super exciting. Obviously, SDSU went 2-0 today. No upsets this year to start the tournament. So both teams will be playing Monday against opponents we are not aware who yet. Obviously, at this point, we will find that out tomorrow. But we'll start with talking about the women's matchup today. The SDSU women beat Denver 86-59 behind a strong showing from Maya Sellen, who kind of took the game over, scoring 26 points, leading all scorers. It's a dominating game for her. Jackrabbits had 3 players in double figures. Maya, Peyton had 18 and 15 for Tori Nelson. Cody, I guess, start with you here. What do you take away from that first women's game today?
I think the biggest thing I had was just their continued dominance in how they started the game. They gave up a 3 on the opening possession, then went on a 16-0 run after that to take a commanding lead. I think at the end of the first quarter, they were up by 14 points. They've been averaging in the second half of conference play a 10-point scoring margin, a positive 10-point scoring margin at the end of the first quarter. So I think that was the biggest thing. They set the tone early.
Mm-hmm.
Denver didn't really have anything to go off after that. They just kind of were dead in the tracks, and they didn't make much progress. So I think that was, a big thing that they did is they came out and set the tone, said we're ready to play, we mean business, and they got it done.
No, for sure. And, the starters, the shooting stayed hot for Jackrabbits. They hit 9 total 3-pointers in the game. They had 2 from Tori, 1 from Peyton, 4 from Maya. So we talk about on the men's side all the time how great the shooting is. Obviously got it again from the women. Another strong showing from them from behind the 3-point arc. Defensively only they held Denver to 59 points, which speaks to their defense. They had 1 player for Denver that scored 25, I believe. So, 1 player for Denver really got going, but outside of that, they really shut everybody else down. Only 1 other player in double figures for them. So, both sides of the basketball, SDSU played strong. Really not much to nitpick for them there. They, rebounded the ball well. They won the rebounding battle 44-30. So just, didn't let Denver get second chance points. Got on transition, shot well, just a dominating win, like we've been saying.
Yeah, I mean, they did everything that they needed to do for this game. They executed the game plan correctly. And this is just, another example of AJ getting his team to play his best basketball, at the end of the season, in the postseason. Last year was kind of an anomaly, with huge injury to Maya. That kind of, and Tori, she was limited. So this year, even though there was a, pretty significant injury to Paige right before the Summer League tournament, they still came in and, avoided an upset and really, put to rest any concerns that Jackrabbit fans had. And this win brings them to 31-4 all time in postseason play in the Summer League tournament. And this is now 13 of 14 years that they've reached the semifinals. So, not too much to complain about.
Well, for sure. And, you look at, you brought up the injury to Paige. Everyone was kind of wondering, would it be a Lindsay show? Would it be Greer? Would she be getting more minutes? We did see, a majority of the minutes, 22 of them go to Lindsay. I think
she got the start.
Yeah, which most people expected. She started. She kind of went back to that role she ended in last year. Haley Greer did get 18. Both played with some confidence. Only 2 combined points, so maybe they're not going to be the offensive factor. But AJ said in his post-game press conference they both bring something different to the offense and defensive end for the Jackrabbit ladies. So it's not Paige. Paige isn't going to be playing in the tournament, so you can't just be relying on maybe her coming back. So those 2 obviously play a different role, but they fit well tonight and played well for the Jackrabbits. Maybe not in the scoring column, but they weren't really asked to do that tonight.
And one thing that we were talking about during the game that's kind of interesting to point out is when Haley Greer came in for Lindsay, and then Callie Tyson came in. The Jackrabbits are really long defensively. It's something, when Paige is out there or Lindsay's out there, and Peyton, they're maybe not quite as long on the defensive end. But when you got, Maya, Tylee, Callie, Haley Timmer, and, Haley Greer on the court, that's a really tough unit defensively. And I think that was something that, showed. And then the other things, they dominated the easy basket war. They had 14 points off of turnovers compared to Denver's 6. They had 48 points in the paint compared to Denver's 34, and they had 16 second chance points compared to Denver's 8. So, they just all facets of the game, they dominated and they executed how they needed to. And, now they get a day of rest heading into Monday's matchup.
No, yeah, and I think, you never really know with these guys because they're such great athletes if they need that day of rest, but definitely doesn't hurt, especially in a game like this where a lot of the starters didn't get overextended. It allows
the most was 25 minutes from any.
Yeah, exactly. So it's an extra day off, another day to get healthy. The team's gone through a lot this year, going all the way back to the beginning of the season. Everyone kind of getting healthy throughout the year. Obviously, the big injury to Paige that we brought up, but it's just good to see that didn't hinder them at all. They're ready to go. Really no complaints from the first game, first night. A lot less stressful in that matchup than maybe a lot of fans wanted to have in the second game tonight. But we can kind of transition into that one unless you have something else.
Yeah, just before I was going to just talk about the environment in the Denny.
Yeah.
Great to be back in the Denny. I think there was almost 9,000 people there for the first session. A lot of blue. I know AJ said it was just comfortable feeling that they had being back in the Denny. So that was great for them to just kind of kickstart their trip here. And from our perspective, being back in the Denny was definitely very fun to have the crowd kind of there and supporting Jackrabbit Nation. So that was all I had.
No, yeah, and it's probably hard to find another mid-major basketball tournament or basketball tournament. In general, that's going to find 8,000 to 9,000 people go out for the the girls matchups where you don't really expect good games. Obviously, everyone kind of came into Saturday's matchup with the expectations that the two South Dakota schools were going to win pretty handily. That's kind of what it turned into be. But pretty cool to see today. Total, I believe the number came out to around 17,000 people total. Seeing the attendance numbers, so most of those SDSU fans, I believe there was a majority blue tonight, obviously because the guys are the ones playing. So come out tomorrow night. Obviously, it's gonna be a fun atmosphere tonight. Tomorrow night there's gonna be some great games on the men's and women's side as well. We're gonna go into the men's side of the action. Obviously, a little bit more stressful game. Men only win 87-79. Leading scorer for the game total, Frankie Fiddler, had a huge first half. I believe 22 points in the first half, only 12 in the second. A guy that I brought up last week could go off for 50 points any night. He obviously went for 34. The Jacks were led by Doug Wilson, who had I believe 22 points, 20 points from Baylor. Both of them pretty efficient, 50% from the field. So the one thought kind of going into it is, are they going to be playing overhyped, a little too fast? Maybe start the game they did, but they really settled in the second half the second half of the first half and really kind of, with that buzzer beater 3 to end the half, really took control. And the second half was kind of out of reach for Omaha.
Yeah, I think getting into a 2-possession game when Baylor hit that 3, to go into halftime, that was huge for them because after that point, we never, there was maybe one little run Omaha had early in the second half to try and trim away at that lead. But, other than that, it was pretty solid from the Jacks in the second half after he made that. And that was huge because in the first half, obviously we had Fiddler going off. He had 22, but UNO was really good at executing in late clock situations. They had a couple, buckets that they made right before the shot clock went off. They also were getting answers when they needed to. There's a couple times the crowd really got into it after, I think Doug had an alley-oop. Zeke had, 2 threes in a row. And it looked like they were, maybe going to get a chance to pull away. And UNO would come down and answer the bell. And they played with great pace. And they came out with probably the better energy in the first half. But I think the halftime adjustments that, SDSU made, and then also the energy they came out with in the second half really helped them, cruise almost a little bit in the second half to a victory.
Yeah, it definitely felt like a bigger blowout, bigger separation in score there than the 87-79 final score says. I do think we talk about, Matt Dentlinger came in, had a big game, only 7 points, but felt like with Doug and Luke maybe getting some foul trouble early, he put in some big minutes, could have potentially been a couple issues there, but it was huge for him to come in, had a good game, obviously plays well against Denver or Omaha, in the past. Down in Omaha had a big game. So good to see him have a big game here for the Jackrabbits, especially in the first half there, contributing pretty big to them, playing well. And they did have 25 points on the bench. So, the bench play continues to help the Jackrabbits, with their depth. They only play the 3 players really, but it's huge to have, those 3 kind of guys come in and be instant offense.
Yeah, they had 9 from Luke, 7 from Matt, and 9 from or 7 from Matt Nims, 9 from Matt Dentlinger. So that was huge, 25 bench points compared to Omaha only had 6. And then I think the other thing, they had 13 offensive rebounds. So they got some extra possessions, got some extra shots, especially in that second half, that allowed them to, increase that separation. So all in all, it was a pretty good effort. I know Hendo said in the postgame press conference he wasn't too happy with how they played defense. I think that was probably pretty apparent. They gave up quite a few points to their best player, which is never something you want to, you want to be able to limit that player a little bit. And then offensively, I think to start the game, they were a little stagnant. They weren't quite moving the ball as much as they normally do, but they kind of settled into that in the second half. So.
I think they were definitely playing with that pressure. Omaha came into it with nothing to lose, so they don't come into it with maybe that little stiffness. I think SDSU, they did come out a little bit stiff. I do think, they do feel that pressure a little bit today, especially when Fiddler came out, hit a couple threes right away. It's like, okay, here we go. Like, it's going to be a dogfight. But they rebounded. They took it, they took it in stride. They came back, and, it was a great win. Obviously, we saw last year Omaha team beat an undefeated SDSU team in the first round. On the women's side, it's great to see not a repeat this year. Good to see, we're sending Omaha back down the interstate probably tomorrow with this weather. But overall, can't complain about a win, especially in the Summit League tournament where every win's going to be hard, especially going forward here. And, it was a great game to see, great game to watch up close. And I'm excited to see what happens Monday and who they get tomorrow.
Yeah, it'll be some good games Sunday to see, if they're going to be facing UMKC or if they're going to be facing USD. But I think if we don't have anything else, Jacob, we'll get into maybe some questions. We have one comment here right now from the audience. So more of a comment than a question, but Doug Wilson's effort that game, difference maker. I definitely said that, watching up close in person, I was impressed with how athletic, he comes across even more athletic and more quick up in person. So that was something cool to see. And I think he was pretty amped up to play in this Premier Center for the first time. He said it in the post-game press conference. He was maybe a little too excited almost even. Those first couple of layups were a little strong off the iron, but I think he settled in, and he was definitely probably the most high-energy guy that they had tonight.
No, for sure. And, even like you could tell he just had a bunch of wound-up energy. In the first half, he got bumped a little bit and just kind of did a 360 dunk pretty effortlessly. If I had to say, if I tried anything similar, I'd like tear both quads. He did it with very little effort, it seemed. And, there's a couple times where, he saved the ball under the hoop, jumping out of bounds, that kind of stuff. So, his effort tonight was huge. You could tell him and Baylor. I believe Baylor was asked in the press conference kind of about, you could be heard kind of getting some players going, motivating them. Saw him jawing with a couple players at times from Omaha. So there definitely was some effort, and some, a couple of those guys were definitely had that effort out there. But Doug's, you could definitely see throughout the game was, a big part of getting them rolling.
Yeah, for sure. And next question here we got from Scott. Did the women struggle with the press, and do you see pressure defense being an issue going forward? I think, they did maybe have a little bit of struggles. There was a few turnovers. I don't know if that was necessarily indicative of what we'll see moving forward. I think the second half of the women's game was reffed very weird. It was hard to get into a rhythm. It was extremely physical at times without any calls, and then there'd just be a random call that didn't seem to affect the play too much. So I think that maybe contributed to some of the kind of how they didn't handle it maybe as best as they wanted to. I think the other thing too is when you're up, 25 points, it's hard to be quite as engaged and continue to play with the same amount of effort and intensity and sense of urgency, at the start of the game.
I definitely say you can't say they didn't struggle with a little bit, especially the first couple of possessions. I just don't think they were ready for it. I don't believe they had Greer or Thunick in the game playing the point guard when the press started. So I think that played into it a little bit. Once they got those two going, I don't think they really struggled with the press too much. So, they did struggle right away, but they definitely got it going later in the game. So, later when they were pressing it looks like Tylee kind of took it over as well. So I don't see it being an issue going forward, but I guess we'll see if more athletic teams can cause more issues.
Yeah, and I think last comment on that before we go into the next one would just be if they do that same thing against USD, if USD were to apply some pressure, I think you would maybe USD would be able to take advantage of the turnovers that they had a little bit better than Denver was able to. But next question we have here also from Scott. How do we get the men's guards going a little bit earlier in the game? I don't know if Jacob, do you want to answer this one?
I think
to start
the way I don't know if there's a way you get them going earlier. I think the way SDSU plays, where they want to play inside out through Doug, is going to maybe hinder the guards from getting going really fast early. Baylor's always going to get going, but I think they try to play through Doug and right away because he's the guy that they're trying to play throughout the whole game. So I think that's maybe why the guards got a little bit slower start. They try to play that inside out game. Teams really don't want to double team down low because that leaves SDSU wide open from three. We've seen that defensive philosophy flip for defenses that SDSU is facing here down the end of down the stretch. So, I guess SDSU has to adjust to how they're playing offensively. If, maybe they're not going to be able to stand there as much, they have to move a little bit more off ball. We have seen the offense get a little stagnant at times, playing ISO ball more than anything. But I do think the way they play inside out is, maybe a factor to why you don't see the guards score as much right away, but they do get it going later in the game when they start playing in transition more.
Yeah, I think they did struggle a little bit at the beginning just with there didn't seem to be much movement off the ball. It was, either dump it in and let, Doug or Luke go to work, and there wasn't much, interchanging on the backside, backdoor cuts that we, Alex has, been really good at that in the past. Charlie's had some, good kick out threes.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe didn't see that, as much right away, but it's also some of these guys' first time, playing in the Premier Center. Baylor and Alex were probably the only ones that have played in here, and Matt maybe before. So, a little bit of nerves, a little bit of pressure, but we also saw Zeke settle in. He hit back-to-back threes there at one point. So, hopefully they get going a little bit quicker than they did tonight and moving forward. But they also, their philosophy is through the post first and foremost. That's how they're always going to play. So,
and kind of looking at the guards, it seems like when it's SDSU struggling, maybe from guard play, who do they go to? Alex always seems to hit a shot at the elbow, get to the rim. So Alex has been a huge part. And one guy we didn't talk about enough yet, Charlie Easley. He got left out the All Summit defensive team. I think a lot of people, Jay talked about on our podcast. Probably should have been on the L defensive team. Didn't get the respect he maybe deserved. In tonight's game, 1 block, 3 steals. So kind of proved why he should be on it. He offensively was great as well, but like I said, defensively, that's where you're going to expect him on the court. You're not going to expect like his 15-point outburst like he had. You're going to expect the defensive ability out of him, and he showed it tonight. He got, like I said, 3 steals and a block, and he really got up on that block. We're used to maybe him with that on-ball defense, but with that block was pretty cool to see. So good facets to his defense we saw tonight, and we saw why he was left off that award, and he shouldn't have been.
Yeah, I mean, he played great. If you're shouting out individual performances, I think he definitely is deserving. Obviously, Doug and Baylor with their offensive, showing tonight. But overall, I think Hendo said it best in the press conference. Games at this time of year, they're going to be hard. They're going to be closer than they have been all year. They're beating teams for the 3rd time, and it's all about surviving advance.
Exactly.
When we get to hopefully Monday and Tuesday night, we're not going to be looking at this game. It's all forward from here, and that's kind of the nature of the beast. You gotta do what you can, get the win, and move on to the next.
No, for sure. And kind of wrapping up this episode, there's really no other questions or saying. If you have another, shoot it our way. I guess, Cody, preference for you, USD or UMKC? Who would you rather see the men face?
I think it's USD. UMKC, I think, presents a little bit. I think they have a higher ceiling on what they can do. We've seen them put up a lot of points at times this year. We've also seen them, lock down teams pretty good and, keep them in the 50s, 60s. So I think UMKC is just a more versatile team. They have a little bit more punch at all positions and match up a little bit better with the SDSU lineup than USD does. And I think for the environment, like we talked about, with Jay and Brad, if you get blue versus red, SDSU versus USD, semifinal night to kick things off on the evening session, that's South Dakota basketball dream right there. So I think that's the matchup we want to see.
I agree. I think USD presents less offensive issues that UMKC will present. I do think, they both are good defensive teams. Todd Lee has been a great defensive coach that's coming into the league. UMKC kind of built their current culture on defense. They kind of loosened it up a little bit offensively. I guess if you look at previous matchups, I think we've lost to USD more recently than we've lost to UMKC. So maybe we have UMKC's number. But I guess, yeah, I don't know if there's a preference. Rivalry games are always tough, especially in the playoffs. If you're in a tournament like this, but I do think UMKC presents more offensive issues that we'd have to deal with. So USC is probably a safer, if that's a thing at this point in the season, opponent to face. But I agree. I think, yeah, you want to face USD just for the rivalry, the atmosphere. Monday night, make it to Summit League Championship, be awesome. Potentially going to be followed up by a NDSU Oral Roberts matchup where we saw a fight. So could be awesome. Could be two great games on Monday night, depending on how today and tomorrow shake out for the men's and women's. But yeah, I'm excited for some more Summit League basketball. We're only 2 sessions in, and it's only going to get better from here.
Yeah, and I think the last thing on that potential USD matchup is if you do get to the championship game, you want to say you went through USD, because that's always a good thing to hang your hat on if you're an SDSU fan. But yeah, it's only going to get more tight, more exciting, more fun, and hopefully the weather that we had today goes away. We can get everyone that maybe couldn't make it out that wanted to come out here Sunday, Monday, Tuesday.
No, for sure. And there's no other questions coming through. We're going to end this live episode. Again, this is episode number 1. We're going to try to, it's us going to be finding rooms here in the Premier Center that we can use. Maybe going to slow us down from starting it right after games. But if you have any questions, DM them to us as well on Instagram or on Twitter at Rabbit Rundown. We'll be live Monday night with a recap of both men's and women's as well. And then hopefully Tuesday after the championship game. With that being said, thanks for tuning in. Follow us on Twitter, Rabbit Rundown with any questions, and we'll see you guys Monday.